Welcome to the Problematic Podcast, where I interview leaders who are solving important problems and helping improve people's lives. Follow this podcast to hear from visionary business leaders every week. And now, here's Glen Stevens. Okay, so who are you and what problem are you solving?
Yeah, my name's Glen Stevens. I'm the mental fitness guy. And what I do for entrepreneurs, and I help entrepreneurs get out of their own way mentally so that they can eliminate the kinds of stuff that causes all kind of anxiety and pressure. Sometimes it can lead to depression, but the mental roadblocks, basically, I want to help entrepreneurs survive the roller coaster ride of entrepreneurship. And that's what I do.
Okay, that's really awesome. So, could you tell us a little bit more about your backstory and what led you to where you are today?
Sure. Yeah. I'm old enough to have a significant backstory. I'm a former pastor, so turned entrepreneurish in about like 5 years ago into like the business world. And the reason, so this is sort of a strange story for people who maybe don't have a spiritual life, but I was praying with a couple of people, and in this prayer, a woman who I was meeting for the first time had like this vision she saw while she was praying, and she thought it was for me. And a half hour later, after like hearing what she had to say, asking her questions and things like that, it's like, wow, I think God wants me to stop being a pastor like I am now so I can do some new entrepreneurial things, both in the business world and in the church world. And, and that's like I came to the conclusion, I think that actually was God talking. And so I better say yes. And my backstory then, so I had 23 years of full-time lead pastor experience in southern Minnesota and in Fargo, North Dakota. And then now for the last 5 years about, I've been a coach, started the founder of a coaching business and have been learning in a whole new realm. And
Wow.
yeah, that's my backstory, short version.
So that was 5 years ago that you
Yeah.
transitioned? Okay.
Yes.
So how did being a pastor affect your view on entrepreneurship or coaching?
Okay. Well, that is a really great question. And a couple of things. One, like as far as my vision of entrepreneurship, they, I'm going to get a little like deep with you here.
Okay.
So, um, the Bible is my main book, and at the very beginning, God is the creator of the known universe, and so in that storyline, as human beings are created, what we learn is God created human beings uniquely in his own image. In the image of God, he created them male and female. He created them. So, God, I like to use this phrase, who's God? What does he do? And therefore, who am I not? Who am I and what do I do? And so God is the creator of the universe. And what he did is he created me and the universe in his, and but he created me and all humans in his image. Therefore, I am creative and should go out and create in partnership with God to make our world a better place, a place of human flourishing. So, entrepreneurs are uniquely, I think, positioned to be agents of human flourishing and creating new ideas, new products, new services, and bringing new things to our world to make it a better place. So there's a deep theological like framework I work out of that really flows out of the first like couple chapters of the Bible. To be real honest with you, that is I remember giving a talk to some college students back about 4 years ago. It was business and the Bible, and it was really fleshing out what I just said to you in a couple minutes, taking
Yep.
about a half hour to really like flesh that out for them.
Okay. So, what's your biggest lesson from the Bible that you can apply to business or entrepreneurship?
Oh wow, biggest lesson. I think the biggest. Wow, I'd say it's two things, and maybe one, but I could go off, right. You asked a preacher to ask to answer that question. So what? I'll give you a handful. First would be servanthood. So um, the creator of the universe, God, the second person, Jesus, came to earth, and he came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life for others. And I really think, and when Jesus talked about greatness, he talked about the humility of being a servant to others. Um, the famous, golden rule: do for others what you would have them do for you. Goes back to Jesus. So servanthood is one, and when you're an entrepreneur, I just spoke with an entrepreneur earlier today who's like he's he's got a unicorn, which means his business that he just started within a month was $1 billion valuation. Um, and but he said, for me, it's not about the money. Like, I'm trying to help people. And so I don't know, we didn't talk spiritual things, but he had a servant mindset that was driving him. And people who get into entrepreneurship where it's all just about the money, I don't know. I don't think they're probably the numbers of those who are successful aren't going to be as many as those who come at it from a servant identity. There's a great book called Good to Great that was written by a Stanford guy named Jim Collins. And when they studied great companies compared to just good companies at the leadership level, the thing that really drove the difference between the great leaders and just the good leaders was his team wanted to call it servant leadership, but he didn't. He's not a he thought that was a weak way of talking,
Mm.
so he called them level 5 leaders, which is crazy. Nobody knows what that means. But whereas if you say servant leader, I think people know what that means. So A, servanthood. B, love. Um, Loving your neighbor as yourself is when you love people, you love your customers, you love your team, you love yourself. That's huge, and that translates really well. People like love, and so, and Jesus said the greatest commandment is love God with all you got and love your neighbors yourself. So there's that, and then this gets a little bit to the mental fitness side of things, but ruthlessly eliminating fear and replacing it with truth and love is, as entrepreneurs, we have to fight fear on a daily basis. There's fear of failure, there's fear of rejection, there's fears, all kinds of fears, the internal doubts, all that stuff. And whenever I read my Bible, people who are motivated by fear end up doing stupid stuff. And when an entrepreneur does stupid stuff, it's not, you don't get good results. So, anyway, I said I'd give you five. I'm going to stop. I'll just give you those three. Ruthlessly eliminate fear and replace it with love and trust,
Okay.
and you're in a lot better shape. And the Bible really can help us understand how to do that.
Okay. So the main one is servant
Servanthood.
leadership. Okay.
Yep. Servant leadership, love for others and yourself. And then underneath that, of course, is a love for God. And then, yeah, don't let fear drive the car.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what drives you. Can you tell us what drives you and what your why is in your life?
Yeah, so I'm gonna give you two. Um,
Okay.
and the first one is at that core of my spiritual life. Like our world is really hurting, and I want to be a catalytic force for the multiplication of a movement of disciples of Jesus so that the world can be transformed by his love. So that's my like personal at the very core why, and how that fits into my business world. That what drives me there is if I can come alongside of entrepreneurs and help them get better, I do think they're uniquely positioned to help make our world a better place. Getting back to what I talked about in creating a better world, a place for human flourishing, entrepreneurs are uniquely positioned to help do that through what they do. So if I can help them get better and get to where they want to go faster and do it in a way that has good values driving it, then they're going to make our world a better place for their customers, for their employees and team, for their community that they live in, and sometimes even through generosity, our world gets to be a better place.
Okay.
And
Cool.
so I want to be this little bit of help to help them succeed.
Okay. So you're trying to make a ripple effect of impact,
Yeah,
kind of?
that's exactly right. Yeah, there's a ripple effect. That's exactly right. When I help an entrepreneur win, they help all kinds of people win. And so, yeah, there's that awesome ripple effect.
Okay. So what's your biggest learning from working with these entrepreneurs and trying to improve their lives?
Yeah, there's the biggest learning I would say is just um, how hard it is, and how like the roller coaster analogy of it's a roller coaster ride. There's high highs and there's low lows, and if you don't have the mental fitness strength to handle the not just the lows but the highs too, you got to handle both of them. You're probably going to get eaten alive. And so that would be um, the big thing I've noticed is nobody, I don't think maybe, well, our culture really likes the word entrepreneur right now. They get all excited, it's this cool thing. And lots of people don't necessarily know what they're walking into and how hard it will be, not just like physically hard, but the mental fortitude needed and the mental strength needed is incredible. I like to say, like, hey, God gave you two hands, right? So one hand is your mental or is your business acumen and your work ethic and your like strategy and all that in your goals. So that lots of people, entrepreneurs, have that's up here. And if your mental fitness is your other hand, if it's down here, that gap that you experience is going to be your ceiling. So, in order to accomplish what you have going on over here on the business side, you need the mental strength to be able to match it in order to accomplish it. So, I think a lot of people like getting your business acumen in place, that's hard, and then building your mental fitness to match it, that's even harder. And you need both if you're going to make it.
Okay. So how do you specifically help entrepreneurs try to get that mental sharpness?
Yeah, so I do three things. I do public speaking. So think of it this way. There's two things I can offer. One is inspiration, the other's transformation. So on the inspiration side, public speaking, I can come and speak and let, like talk about it. It's like, hey, this entrepreneurship thing, it really is hard. And there's a mental aspect to it. And I can talk about the reality of that, but inspire entrepreneurs that you can overcome, you can survive this, you can get through it. So I can, through speaking and then training and workshops, I can not only do that, but give them a handful of tools in their tool belt to help them out on a daily basis. But those are both more on the inspiration side, and then on the transformation side, what I the main thing that I offer is an 8-week training that we meet every week for 8 weeks. There's an app that goes with it. You learn what your 3 mental muscles are, how to strengthen them, and the exercises you need to give yourself to on a daily, regular basis, pretty much, in order to build the mental fitness strength to match your business goals and ideas. Like how to build this up here. And it does take, the research shows, 6 to 8 weeks to get a baseline of mental fitness health. And so I call that the mental fitness catalyst. It's 8 weeks long, and it's got video. The founder of the company where my certification is from um, is Shirzad Shamin. He wrote the book that's over this shoulder up here,
Yeah.
Positive Intelligence. And he does the teaching, about an hour of teaching that people listen to 1 hour each week. And then the app guides them through exercises. And then I work with them once a week to make sure it's all coming together and applying it to their specific situation and helping them with their specific challenges. And then we can also talk about how to apply it to what they personally are facing in the moment.
Okay. So, what's a common problem you see with all these entrepreneurs you work with?
Yeah. Yep. So I'm going to give you 2. All right. One is we're really hard on ourselves and beat ourselves up. So we just beat the snot out of ourselves, and really are negative. We can just really be hard on ourselves. And the flip side of that is we don't know how to celebrate very well. So one thing that happens, entrepreneurs, lots of them are very action oriented people, and they've got goals. They're chasing the next win. They're chasing the next thing. And when you're chasing all the time, you don't take the time to stop and go, wow, that was pretty cool. And celebrate and really be grateful and thankful for what just happened, and to, yeah, experience the joy of having accomplished. Because it's sort of like chasing the horizon. So if you can imagine chasing the horizon, you never get it, because the horizon is always in front of you. And I think lots of entrepreneurs, they're chasing the horizon, they don't even know it. And that eventually you only run so far before you get tired. And it's better to stop once in a while, sit down, have a great meal, and enjoy and appreciate what was accomplished. As a matter of fact, it's a good practice to do that every day. But lots of entrepreneurs struggle with celebration, and then being like kind to themselves. The way, the voice in their head that's talking to them about how they did that day is, if they talk to other people like that, they wouldn't have any friends. And but they talk to themselves that way, and that's not It's not a success recipe, and it's not wise either, because it's usually that voice in your head's a liar and it's not telling you the truth. And if you listen to it too long, it'll drive you crazy.
What do you think causes that voice in people's heads?
Yeah. So here's where the neuroscience comes in. Um, so, neuroscience and psychology, we all have neural pathways in our brains. Okay. And think of your brain, instead of it like being one big organ, think of it as having two different parts to it. And so, our brain has two jobs. Job one, survive. In other words, don't die. Job two is thrive, flourish. And you got to do job one before you can do job two. So the brain stem is, and then parts of the left hemisphere, which is really good for analyzing things and data and that kind of stuff. But that's sort of like one brain that you have, and you use that to stay alive. And when we take neural pathways down into that part of the brain, um, we need to do that when we're alerted to something that could be bad. Something bad could happen, and that's a really good thing. And usually we know we're there when we're feeling negative emotions, and then the hey, something's wrong here, you better do something, that kind of thought in our head. um, what happens is we get stuck down those neural pathways, and whenever anything happens, because those neural pathways are reinforced, it's really easy to go down there all the time. And in that part of the brain is where those voices in the head say things like, you're a loser, you'll never be any good, you're crazy, nobody's gonna ever buy your product, or that kind of talk, self-talk, happens in that part of the brain, and it's triggered by negative emotions. You don't have to take those neural pathways. You can take neural pathways into the right hemisphere, the middle prefrontal cortex, and there's something called the empathy circuitry of our brains. And that's like, think of it as this other brain where you're able to show up as your best self and do your best work. And that part of your brain, we say, has 5 superpowers. And one of the superpowers is empathy. Think of kindness, forgiveness, compassion, those kinds of behaviors and thoughts and emotions. And then there's curiosity, there's creativity and innovation, there's purpose and meaning, and then there's clear, calm, focused action. Those would be like the 5 superpowers of that brain. And what happens, that part of the brain is like part 2. And sometimes we get so used to going down the neural pathways to stay alive and sort of the triggers that come down there, we can't recover, and we don't realize that we're doing it, because we adapt these strategies when we're pretty young to just, what do I have to do to be successful? And we get used to using those neural pathways. And the way neural pathways work is the more often you use them, the more traveled and easier it is to travel those neural pathways.
Okay.
So when you're using them all the time, it's sort of like your knee-jerk reaction without even thinking about it is to go down that neural pathway. So that's why it takes like 6 to 8 weeks to like recognize you're doing it, and to be able to um, tell your brain, basically like talk to your brain and say, hey, don't go there. We're down there. That's where the crazy voices are. Instead, let's go up here where we can be creative right now, or we can be curious right now and do some research, or where we can be empathetic right now and not ruin some relationships with our coworkers
Okay.
or this customer. And And so the reason why we have those voices in our heads that beat us up is the way our neural pathways get formed. And the amazing thing about our brain that we've been given is we aren't at its mercy. We have agency. We can rewire our brains and create new neural pathways that serve us in much better ways. And so that's a cool thing I get to do is I get to help in very practical, simple ways, help people figure out how to do that. So I train entrepreneurs' brains to eliminate those negative emotions and thoughts so they can get out of their own way and stop self-sabotaging their own success and happiness.
That's really cool what you're doing. So,
Yeah, thanks.
what are some specific intentional ways that entrepreneurs can celebrate these wins?
Yeah. One, let me give you one that is very simple. Okay. And I'll show you. I just, I have like these Moleskines, right? Okay. And I just cracked this new one open. It was a Christmas present for my daughter. I'm running out of room in the other one. And so in this one, you can't really read that, but it's a gratitude journal. And there's my John Hancock on there
Okay.
and the date 7/3/24 right there. And I've got three things, practical, specific things that I thought of this morning that I'm thankful for.
Okay.
And like keeping a gratitude journal like that is really one very simple way. When I have to stop and think about things I'm grateful for, gratitude is part of the empathy circuitry. And I go into I'm forcing and telling my brain to go use this part of the brain where I feel happy, where I'm thankful, where I'm grateful, and I'm in that headspace. And so that's one. And so celebration, a part of celebration is seeing what was accomplished and then um, throwing a party. And it can be as simple as just stopping, writing it down, and just letting it put a smile on your face or sort of just that warmth in your heart. Like, that's cool. Or I really appreciate that. So when you can celebrate the little things on a daily basis, you're getting yourself ready to be able to celebrate the big things that only happen once in a while.
Okay.
Um, and then celebrating. So I like the idea of a gratitude journal as being able to get this practice going for celebration. It's a form of celebration. And then for bigger ways would be, here's what happens for entrepreneurs who are especially they're always chasing the next thing, would be to tell the coworkers around you that you have this tendency and to give them permission to tell you when you're coming to the end of, like, you've been working on your annual goals, or you've been working on a big project, or you've been working on whatever. Say like, hey, when we get to the end of this, we need to do something fun. We need to stop and we need to celebrate what was accomplished. But here's what's going to happen if I'm not in my right mind. um, I'm going to want to just be talking about the next thing we have to do instead of stopping for that moment and being present in the moment and really appreciating what was done. And so you need to help me. And I want you to be my, like, horizon chasing policeman. When you see me speeding toward the horizon, you need to give me a ticket and tell me I got to stop. So asking for help is a good thing. And usually, if you're not very good at celebrating, you need a couple people who are better at it to help you um, figure out, what are we going to do? Are we going to have a meal? Are we going to go out for uh, drinks? Are we going to go to a game? Are we going to You know, are we going to take a day off? Or what are we going to do? We're going to go river rafting. We're going to go sandbag, whatever. What we got to do something that sort of marks that we accomplished this, and that was really cool, and we should appreciate it.
Okay. So, on the topic of your gratitude journal, how do
Yes.
you implement that into your schedule? Like, do you do it right in the morning or towards the end of the day?
Yeah, I'm a morning person, so I like to do it in the morning. Like first thing, sit down at my desk. It's like grab it, open it up, and just do it immediately. I like to take a walk in the morning, so usually it'll be after that walk, come in, sit down, and before I get busy and distracted with all the tasks of the day, I'll sit down and do it then. Some people like to do it at the end of the day. There's a real neat combination of I call it the big three at the sometimes, and I've done this before too. It's okay to switch it up once in a while too, to variety. At the beginning of the day, instead of what am I grateful for, I'll list my top three priorities for the day, and I'll write them down. And then at the end of the day, either the end of the workday or at night before you hit the bed, um, you stop and look and see what were you intending to do, what did you do, and then journal your three things you're grateful for that day.
Okay.
And what that does is at the beginning of the day, it opens a story loop of like, will Glenn get these three things done? And then at the end of the day, you get to close the story loop, which means you'll probably sleep better because your brain doesn't have to try to worry about whether you close the story loop or not. You actually took the time to close it, which gives your brain permission to go to bed and then get up the next morning and do it all over again.
That's awesome. So, how long have you been doing the gratitude journal?
Well, off and on in different forms,
Oh,
years.
really?
So, um, and there will be times, I mean, that I lose my journal or or I let my horizon chaser take over, and I don't think I have the 3 minutes it takes to sit down and write the three things that I'm grateful for, and I'm sort of like in this panic mode, so I'm not perfect at it at all. So there are interruptions, but the best thing to do when you realize, oh crap, that happened, didn't it, is just to get back on get back on the treadmill. It's not a treadmill. Let's say get back on the plan and just start over again and try to get a new streak going.
Okay.
Um,
Awesome. So, on a different topic, what's like the first step for an entrepreneur to try to improve their mental health or maybe just their mental clarity?
yeah. Um, the first step is, I think, to be honest. So the way you can know there's mentally you've got something bothering you is if you have any negative emotions that you're experiencing for more than a second. So negative emotions aren't bad. They're alert signals that something needs to be taken care of. And it's like putting your hand on a hot stove. Um, your nerve ending tells you hot, move. And so that's really good. Like that's a nanosecond. You don't want to feel the pain of hot more than that. Otherwise, it's destructive. Same thing with our negative emotions. They're there to give us an alert signal. And if we're experiencing them for more than like a second or so, we are self sabotaging. And what we need to do is be honest about that. So be honest about what you're feeling. And that's like the first step, step one. And hi, my name's Glenn. I'm an entrepreneur, and I've got these negative feelings right now. That is like the first step in the, I don't know how many steps, there's that's famous 12-step thing. Is like, for step one is just being honest with yourself. And uh, th- yeah, you don't want to live in that negativity all the time. Instead, you want to be able to move towards what's positive. But if you don't even see it, that's the problem. I was talking with an entrepreneur in Boise, Idaho this morning, and he's like, he was pretty worked up about entrepreneurship and the mental element of it. And he said, people, there's so many unspokens about entrepreneurship in our world today. People aren't talking about how hard it is. They're not talking about the anxiety that so many people are feeling. They're not talking about um, just the anguish that, the weight of leadership, or the pressure to secure the funding, or like all this stuff. People don't talk about it. The models that we have make it sound like it's all parties, fun, and success all the time. And and therefore people are having normal experiences, but they hide it, and they're not honest about that negative emotions. Especially, I think, for guys, it might be harder than gals, generally speaking. Um, and that is just not a healthy place to be. And so, job one, first thing, is pay attention to your emotions. Usually, entrepreneurs are good of keeping track of their thoughts, and those are awesome. But your head's connected to the rest of your body and your central nervous system. They're meant to work together, and we ignore our feelings, and we like just sweep them under the rug. And that is a problem waiting to happen. It's going to come back to bite you. So start getting really honest about your emotions, especially the negative ones, and let that be the alert signal. Say, like, okay, I need to pay attention to that.
Okay, cool. So, are there any misconceptions with mental fitness that frustrate you?
Um, Misconceptions that frustrate me. Thanks for asking that question. It's making me think. And yeah, one would be that people people feel shame around mental fitness strength if it's not where it needs to be. And it is what it is, and we shouldn't feel shame about that. We should instead like see it, and then, like, if I if I'm building something and I need a saw, I shouldn't feel shame that I don't have a saw. I should just go to the store and buy one. And it's like, okay, if my mental fitness isn't like where it needs to be, I shouldn't feel shame about that. It's normal. Everybody could strengthen their mental fitness. Everybody could. And the facts are, so the research and numbers, like only 20% of individuals have a good, strong baseline of mental fitness strength. Only 20% do. And the other 80% are just not living up to their potential. And so it's really normal for people to not be where they should be. And so it's frustrating when people feel shame about it. And then when people don't recognize how important it is, I guess that, for me, one of the biggest challenges for me is to convince people that I want to help them. And the best way to help them is to help them with their mental fitness. Because if you do, you're going to perform at a higher level. You are going to manage your emotions, your stress, your conflict, your changes that you have to go through. And we have a lot of change as entrepreneurs. You're going to manage all those more smoothly. You're going to build healthier relationships with people, and you're going to have personal wellness. So you're sleeping at night instead of um, staying up and ruining your health. So it's like the ROI of that is huge, but it's hard to put a dollar number on that. And it's hard to quantify that over time. And so getting people to go, I'm going to invest time on this now and spend money on it because it's as important as these other things. Most people aren't there.
Okay.
And so I guess part of that is just for me is like, well, that makes my sales job more difficult. But what maybe frustrates me about that isn't just me, but it's like what it also means is people are going to continue to suffer needlessly when they could get help with like overbearing anxiety, live on the edge of burnout, things like that, and they don't have to.
Do you feel like burnout is a big problem in entrepreneurship?
Yes,
Like, how
it
big of a
is.
problem is it?
Um, I think I think it's a significant. I haven't seen any studies, but here's the mythology of entrepreneurship in our culture and the heroes, right? You know, you work 120 hours a week and you just grind. You put up a cot in your office and you sleep there. You know, you you just like you hear those like I don't stories like that. It's like, oh yeah, I'm grinding, I'm working. You know, like, and it's like, you know, pat yourself on the back and maybe I get a little patch, the entrepreneur patch I can sew on my things. Like, yeah, I worked 100 hours this week or something like that. And yeah, that's not gonna, that's not gonna, it's not gonna, that is unsustainable. And so I see modeled in and celebrated in the entrepreneur world the unsustainable and unrealistic. But people think that's actually what you have to do to be successful. And so they're getting set up for a hard fall, and burnout is at the core of that hard
Mm.
fall because the, uh, yeah, the system that's been built doesn't match the energy level of a normal human being. And yeah, anyway, I think that gets to the answer of what you were
Yeah.
asking.
So, how is your own personal mental fitness?
My own personal mental
Yes.
fitness is as good as it's ever been. So, um, part of like, I didn't realize that mental fitness was a big issue for me. But I did experience it as a pastor. So I was a part of a church in Albert Lee, Minnesota, and our church over 13 years, you know, grew. We did 2 building campaigns. We added lots of staff, like things. And then eventually at one point it stopped. And I had that horizon chaser sabotage thinking in my head. And all of a sudden that was like, oh, it really affected me. And I just didn't realize how much it was affecting me. And then it came to Fargo, part of a church here that had been around for a few years. Same thing, grew a lot right away, went through relocate. Well, we added a second campus, like things like that, grew the staff, different things. But then we hit a ceiling again. And the that ceiling was my, as the point leader, my mental fitness was part of what was going on there. And I didn't have the mental fitness to lead through that barrier. And I was older now, I guess. and it really impacted me. Um, I ended up getting like an anxiety disorder, so I had to get some counseling and take some medication, and it took a few it took a few months to like stabilize from that. And I wasn't non-functional or anything like that, but it really impacted me in a very negative way. And so I didn't get introduced to these mental fitness ideas that I'm able to help people with now until after all that chapter in my life was closed. But shortly after that, I was introduced to it, and I've been working out almost daily for about 3 years now on my mental fitness. And I'm able to manage setbacks and failures, have hard conversations, do different things that I need to do with much more resiliency and emotional intelligence, and with a real great growth mindset that I had little bits of that before, but I didn't even know what I was missing. And I've been able to add those to my tool belt and really build them stronger. So my mental fitness right now, like, is as good as it's probably ever been in
That's
my
awesome.
life, and I know what to do to keep building it.
So how does it feel now that there's more balance? Like, how does it feel versus like 10 years ago?
Yeah, well, it feels um, it feels calm, if that makes
Yeah.
any sense. It feels honest instead of yeah, like being able to admit when things don't go the way I want and not try to make it look prettier than it really was. So there's less pressure. Um, Stress gets managed better. So it feels calmer, and I would say it feels more fun. Like the fun factor goes up when your mental fitness is stronger. Even dealing with hard things is more fun and can be enjoyable. Um, One of the key concepts of mental fitness, this fits in with a growth mindset, is something I call the possibility question. And it's really at the heart of this. And when you ask this question and seriously and honestly try to answer it, you force your brain to use neural pathways into that part of your brain where you do your best work. And the possibility question is, how can I turn what I'm facing right now into a gift and opportunity? So maybe I just got laid off. Maybe my biggest investor just pulled out. Maybe my best employee quit and went to my competitor. Maybe you know, that something like that could be a knockout punch, right? Um, and to stop and go, okay, that happened. Am I happy about it? No. Am I going to live and dwell on it? No. I'm going to ask the possibility question. How could that become a gift or an opportunity for me? And then spending time with that until I've got an answer that I can commit to. And then I move into that. And that is really great. Yeah. And then, like, on a personal level, it's really helped me. I just celebrated 2 days ago my 36th wedding anniversary.
Awesome.
And um, I am able to have better, more honest, and empathetic conversations with Jill than I've ever had before as well. And so that's really cool.
Awesome. Well, congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, what advice would you have for your 18-year-old self?
My 18-year
Yes.
old self. That is a great question. Oh, man. My 18-year-old self, it would be, don't base your worth on your achievements and accomplishments.
Okay. And what leads you
And
to giving that advice?
yeah, so the top mental saboteur, that one of the top ones I have to there's 10 ways human beings sabotage themselves, and in our work we call them your saboteurs. There's only 10. It's based on factor analysis research that gets to the core causal factors. There's just 10. And one of my top, like two or three, is called the hyperachiever saboteur, which is again chasing the horizon and always looking to what's next. And what drives that is this belief that your worth and value is based on your performance and your accomplishments. And I had sort of bought into that lie, and which is, it's almost embarrassing as a former pastor. It's like, my real worth and value is based on being a creature of God, created by God in his image, and um, saved by his grace. Like, that's where my real identity and value and worth is. But that saboteur would come and try to tell me, well, oh, that, yeah, but if you don't do this, that, and other thing, then you're not good enough. And so as an 18-year-old, pretty driven and ambitious, and basing my identity and worth on accomplishment and performance, I would say, that's a lie. Stop believing that lie, and you'll actually do more and accomplish more and have more fun doing it with, and enjoy the company of more friends if you do this. Don't let that be at the core of
Okay.
what's driving you.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah,
why
that's
I
really
say
good
that.
advice. Thanks. So, how
Yeah.
can listeners get involved and support what you're doing?
Yeah. Well, a couple ways. Like I said, I speak. So if you know of a group that needs, like, they've got an event that they put on every year or whatever, or you're a part of a company that you bring in people on a regular basis to do training or speaking, I'd love for you to pass along my name if you think what I do could help that particular group. And if you're um, looking for a coach who can help you with these kinds of things, reach out. We could have a conversation to see if I'm a good fit for you and what you're going through right now. Um, and then just, yeah, I think the main thing though is pass along. I On LinkedIn, you can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm just sort of started getting going on a YouTube channel, and on Instagram and YouTube. I've got a digital uh, person who's helping me get those sort of up and rolling. So if you wanted to follow me on any of those, but where I've been most active is on Instagram, and Glen Stevens
Glenn
Jr.
Stevens Jr.
is where you can find me.
Okay. Do you have a website?
Yep. I do have a website,
Okay.
mentalfitnessguy.com.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
I had a great time. Thank you. I'm really glad I was able to be on.